It's the PutemupPodcast with your host, Frank Mordeholm.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Putemup Podcast, episode number 4. Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited today to give you our special guest that's going to be on today. His name is Mike Gattuso. Wait till you hear this conversation and who this gentleman is. But without any further ado, couldn't do this without my co-host, Mr. Pat Regalado. Pat, what's up, brother?
What's up?
How you doing, man?
What's going on, man? How was your week? How was your weekend?
Week was good, man. Today's actually my birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday, Mr. Frank Morjon.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. 55, man.
Wow.
Jesus
Christ. You're
terrific,
bro. You don't look a day over 54. You're doing great. Doing great,
brother.
great. But as usual, we're glad to be back. Glad to have all of you listening. We've gotten a great response, and boy, do we have a show for you guys. But I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Frank Morjon tell you all about it. I'm going to kick it right back to him. Mr. Frank, go ahead and take it away.
All right, guys, so check this out. The last episode, a couple episodes we've been talking about is the sanctioning bodies, right? The Florida Boxing Commission and how they're supposed to oversee the sanctioning bodies, the amateur sanctioning bodies. Well, today we have a special guest. His name is Mike Gattuso. He is the CEO, owner of Global Fighting, and it's an amateur sanctioning body that when I met him, and this was back in 2012, that brother was doing almost every single amateur show in the state of Florida. Like, he was it. You needed something, boom, he was the guy to call, and he would make it happen. So we're going to have him on the line in a few minutes. We'll also talk about, the UFC over the weekend.
We got a lot of news, a lot happening. The obvious, of course, Amanda Nunes news, but not necessarily just talking about how she lost and what happened, but really what happened behind the scenes and what happened afterwards.
Yeah, and I also like to look at it from a business point of view, right? From an operational point of view, statistics point of view. I want to talk about how that affected the UFC as far as marketing ability with Amanda Nunes and now with Juliana Pena and everybody else. So comparing to, because it's amazing. Like, Amanda beat, Ronda
Rousey.
And then she beat Cyborg. And I mean, she was knocking people out. And then here comes Juliana and then the ride is over. But I'm interested to see as far as the marketing perspective how they're going to flip that, because Ronda had 19 million views, and Juliana needs to bring up her numbers.
Well, there was always an argument because Amanda always thought that the marketing wasn't favorable to her as compared to Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
And I thought about this last night or night before last when it actually happened, that because of perhaps Juliana Pena and the way that she looks, maybe they'll up that marketing. So you never know which direction they're going to take.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get to our first guest. The gentleman is first of all, he's passionate about MMA. He's passionate about combat sport. Mr. Mike Gattuso. He is a guy that I've known for so many years. He's the guy that I like to talk business with, and he's the perfect person to add the business side of it with the sanctioning bodies, regulations, and rules and regulations. He can tell us basically what's going on today and what's happening. Mike, how you doing, man?
Woo, Mr. Mike Gattuso. All right.
Doing good, man. Doing good. Happy birthday, Frank.
Ah,
How you
man.
doing, Frank?
Hey, how are you, man?
Thank you so much,
Thanks for
brother.
coming by, man. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, man. Thanks for being on, man. I want to, just because we talked about it on a couple of shows, and I was hitting hard on the Florida Boxing Commission and the sanctioning bodies and what they do and what they don't do. Let's start with you. You started in sanctioning back, from what I remember, 2013. Correct me, how did you start and when did you start?
Well, Frank, if you remember, the first time I actually got out, promoting wasn't allowed yet. They had banned, at the time they had banned amateur MMA due to that, the soccer, or not the bar fights that they were doing.
Yeah.
And they ended up banning it. So I got in touch with the Florida Boxing Commission, and I wanted to know when the amateurs were getting ready to launch again. And when they did, right away I jumped on it, and I started promoting mixed martial arts. I was actually one of the first to promote the sport after the ban.
Yeah.
Okay, not before the ban, but after the ban. And that's how I got to be so known around Florida, is because at the time in Fort Myers here, I was promoting fights. People were coming from Melbourne, from Tampa, Orlando, because at the time I was the only one throwing the fight. So I got to meet everybody, got to know all the fighters, the coaches, And that's how I ended up organizing the group, the Florida MMA events group, because I knew enough people to pull together to try and organize something, to try and structure the MMA community. And Frank, between me and you together, I think that's what we did. And, look where we are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For those who don't know, when you go to Facebook and you do the Florida MMA events group page, it's Mike Gattuso who was the mastermind behind that page. You'll see me as an admin and Mike as an admin, but Mike was the mastermind of that page. And when we collaborated together and we said, hey, I have Florida MMA events, he had Florida MMA events, and we kind of bonded in making that happen. It's over 5,000-6,000 people now in the group. It's a tool for promoters to go on there and promote within the Florida MMA community. So hats off goes to Mike in actually leading that and making sure that took place and make it happen. But that's just one example of how Mike got into and how he helps the community, how he likes to pull everybody together, how he brings the community, whether it be promoters, fighters, matchmakers, all that into that. So besides the Facebook page, you've also been very active in the sanctioning body. And what I want to go through is, how is the process of how did you become a sanctioning body? What was that process like? Walk us through that process.
Well, the thing for me, Frank, is when I tackle, something that I want to do, especially sanctioning at the time. At the time, I just loved MMA. And promoting, I used to use ISKA. I followed John Morrison around. I was watching what these guys were doing, and I fell in love with it. I said, there's something that I can do here that I can actually help the sport. So, I started watching what they were doing. Next thing you know, I applied for my license. I felt that between promoting, matchmaking, that I had learned enough experience that I could do this. And I started going through the rules and regulations. I started reading them, and I started understanding them. Once I started understanding them, I knew that I could do this, and it's not that anybody can do it. You have to have some type of passion for it.
Yeah.
Because even at being business, you can't stick somebody who doesn't understand MMA and have him enforce something that he doesn't know what he's even enforcing for.
Yeah.
So basically, being a sanctioned body is you're enforcing rules and regulations that are set by the Florida Boxing Commission, as long as they're correct. And even when they're wrong, you still got to enforce it.
Yeah, that's true too.
I got a whole slew of stuff here that I'm going to go through because it's crazy. It's crazy, but it's not. You can't just blame the Florida Boxing Commission. You got to blame the MMA community for not standing up and helping making those changes or catching those things that are wrong and fixing them. So we're to blame just as much as they are. They're dependent on us, and we're not giving the feedback that they need. So I went through the rules and regulations. We're going to go through.
Is it more about enforcing the rules or people ignoring the rules? I mean, what's...
Great question.
Well, my job is to enforce rules. Now, if the rules are set in stone, I can enforce them. But if they're not set in stone, I can't enforce something that's not there.
All right. So let's walk me through this then. So what you're saying is that in order to become a sanctioning body, an amateur sanctioning body, you have to fill out an application, right?
Correct.
Pat, have you seen that application?
I actually have. It's 11 pages.
It's 11 pages long.
It's 11 pages, and it kind of starts out like a job application, and it asks you a bunch of questions, and doesn't really ask you too much about MMA. It asks you about organizations and commissions and things like that.
Is there at least a background check?
There is a background check.
Is it a background check in which the Boxing Commission asks you if you did something wrong?
They want a certified documentation along with $100, and they want somebody to write something nice about you.
Is that how it went, Mike?
Yes. Obviously, you can't have a criminal record. You can't be a felon in any way. You do have to have experience. They do ask for experience requirements, letters from people who can vouch for you that you do carry experience to be able to do this.
And so that's my question. How much of experience can you have if you've never done it? I mean, what did you put on your application for experience? Now, we know who you are in the MMA community, so that goes without saying. But, you dealing with the promoters. But if it wasn't you, if it was just a guy off the street who had a good record, who wants to be in your position, who wants to do exactly what you do, but doesn't have experience, what are they supposed to do?
They shouldn't be in a business. They really shouldn't be in a business. I mean, the whole thing is having the experience, by promoting my own my own events, there's things that I've learned.
Yeah.
You know, and you carried that on into your sanctioning because it's basically you had to follow the rules when you did your own show.
Yeah.
So for somebody to come off the streets and, you know, let's say you have a business degree, you know, but if you don't understand the sports and every day of throwing an event, I mean, you can learn the rules and regulations, yeah, and enforce them. It's no different than a state inspector, you know?
Yeah.
But
So-
technically, anybody off the street who fills these qualifications could literally become a sanctioning body. Is that?
Yeah, so if they fill out the application, they throw in $100 and they have a good background check. Experience, I guess if it could be anything. It's almost like the experience to be a pro fighter. You need to have 5 fights. You need that experience in order to go pro. But the underlining of that is it doesn't necessarily need to be MMA. It could be any 5 combat sport type of related 5 fights, right? So it's kind of like this. If you wanted to be a sanctioning body, you have to have the experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you were doing sanctioning once before. Because let me ask you this, Mike. Does the Florida Boxing Commission ever put you specifically in training every year, once a year, when you took the exam, or not even an exam, there wasn't even an exam.
None. There's
None.
nothing. So
None.
it's a lot of on-the-job training.
So you learned on the job.
I learned on the job.
And-
Basically,
and-
you know what I mean?
So you got your license, and thank God it's you. Thank God we know who you are and what you've done in this community and how much you've put into this sport. But I have a problem with the next guy who comes off the street, who doesn't have any experience, who's not well connected in the world of MMA, who's never done any shows, and he's granted a license. How can you explain to me, Mike, real quick, in your perspective, how is it that we only have a handful of sanctioning bodies that we use, but yet we've got 13?
13 sanctioning bodies in the state of Florida.
13 sanctioning bodies that are licensed in the sanctioning body. How is that possible?
Well, you know, for example, you know, I deal with a few promotions, you know, and it's really about your credibility, you know, and a lot of these promoters, you got to remember, when you start talking about the old promotions, they're still stuck in the wild west.
Yeah.
You know, they're
Yeah.
stuck to the time before all the regulations got put in place. So they think they can get away with it because, hey, you know, we got away with it then, you know, why can't we do it now? You know, it's not hurting anybody. But you know what? You have to follow these rules. You know, these regulations are there for a reason. They're there to protect the promoter. They're there to protect the sanction body as well as the fighter.
Yeah.
You know.
So you mentioned
But
you mentioned the rules and regulations. Let's take a real quick break, real quick, and we'll get back to the rules and regulations and making sure see what you're talking about. Let's talk about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Right back.
We'll be right back.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your
All right,
host,
Mike.
Frank Mordeholm.
I don't understand what's going on here.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Mordeholm.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Putemup Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, man. Follow us on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook.
PutemupPodcast.com.
Putemup Podcast, man. Just follow us. We're in the middle of a conversation with Mr. Mike Gattuso, the
All right.
CEO and founder of Global Fighting Solutions. He's the man when it comes to the sanctioning body, the amateur sanctioning body. He's one of the pioneers that started this whole thing and really is in depth with the rules and regulations. Speaking about rules and regulations, I wanted to give Mike a few minutes to go over some of the stuff that he has. Listen, guys. Glue your ear to this part of this interview because this is where the meat and potatoes is all at. Mike, can you go over some rules and regulations you were talking about?
Absolutely. I want to start first back to the uniforms.
Okay.
You had said, you know, at the time, it was my referee. At the time, I didn't have a shirt for him, and as long as it's a black shirt, to identify him as a referee, and it happened to say rise. In all reality, nowhere in the rules and regulations does it state that the sanctioned body has to be uniform. You know, to me, it could be a Mickey Mouse in there. You know, if you want to sponsor an ad on that shirt, I'll be more than happy to put it on there. But in all reality, it should be professionalism. You are right. And I am changing that, by the way. I brought in the vice president, John the Musclebot Riviera, as my vice president.
Wow.
All right. I remember him from
sanctioning. And he's bringing professionalism and organization to Global Fighting Solutions. So it's going to be a change of what you're getting ready to see.
Wow.
So I'm going to go down to a few things here that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. And
But-
I'm going to bring up one
but-
thing that bothers me the most.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Before you even say that, let me get a chance to rebuttal here real quick. So, in regards to what I was saying, in regards to the referee having that logo of Rise on there, to me, it was about perception. It wasn't about so much professionalism because you did a great job in refereeing. Let's not take that out of the equation. You did a great job refereeing, and you did a great job sanctioning it. But when it comes to perception, it just gave me automatically that perception that, hey, because you're wearing a Rise shirt, then you could be bought. That you're going to do what I tell you to do, and who's going to win is who's going to win. I tell you who's going to win. If there's a Rise favorite, then you go with the Rise favorite. So for me, it's a perception of you were bought into the Rise category. It may not be true in your eyes, but the perception is that you were bought off by Rise. And I don't want to give anybody that impression. And I was hoping that somebody would take away the message and saying, hey, you know what? If we're a sanctioning body, the only promotion that we should be doing is the global logo right there on their T-shirts, because you should be promoting the global fighting organization and not the Rise organization. Would you agree with me on that, or do we have?
No, absolutely. I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, matter of fact, you probably won't see that again. But my whole point is, the referee could be wearing pajamas, and he's still going to do what a referee's.
Absolutely, 100%.
If I see any unbiased, obviously I terminate him, or whether it's a judge, I'll terminate him.
Yeah.
But for the most part, that's why I overlook the event. I make sure that none of that is happening. That is up to me to make sure that referee does his job and doesn't take sides.
Yeah, but even
I do agree.
But even as a CEO of the company and in charge of the sanctioning body rules within that event, you probably yourself have rules and regulations that were done by the Florida Boxing Commission that probably piss you off, or you probably don't understand why we're doing it. Is there any rules and regulations that you want to start off with that maybe rocks your boat a little bit?
Oh, yes. Okay, so this has come up, and I'm sure a lot of promoters or fighters, I want to bring this up to fighters and coaches, because they need to start asking the promotions, what is their deductible on their insurance policy? In the insurance, and listen to this. This is no shit, man. I mean, I'm going to read out the insurance regulation for you right now of what it says and what the loophole is. Okay, so the amateurs. This is what it says under insurance requirements. It says amateur sanctioning organizations are required to secure the following: accidental health benefit policy for athletes of $10,000 minimum. $10,000. Let me tell you something. If you break your leg and tore some ligaments, $10,000, you know what it's going to get you? A wheelchair and roll you the hell out of the hospital, because there ain't going to be enough money to fix it.
And maybe two
Tylenol.
Tylenols.
That's number one. General liability insurance policies, name and sanctioned body is co-insured for $1 million per claim, $2 million aggregate minimum. Okay? Fine and dandy. You got to have claim forms. Do you know what they forgot, Frank?
What?
There's deductible. You can put a $5,000 deductible on this, and guess what? It's no good. The fighter doesn't even have the money to pay the $5,000 deductible.
Yeah.
It should be no deductible. They left that out.
Wow.
They left it out. How crazy is that?
That's crazy.
How crazy. So right now these promoters can be putting $5,000. You can put a $10,000 deductible. Guess what? What worth is that insurance if you can't afford to pay the deductible?
That's true.
Now, it states it in the pro rules that the promoter is responsible for. But that's in the pro rules. I'm looking at the amateur rules, and the amateur rules doesn't say nothing about a deductible, whether it should be a minimum or whether it's a max or whether there's no deductible, or who's in charge of paying.
Yeah.
So where does it
right
lie? Now that there's no deductible stated, where does it lie?
Where does it lie?
Yeah.
It lies that before the fighters or coaches put their fighters in that event, they need to ask, hey, what's deductible as an insurance policy?
Yeah.
First of all, the fighter shouldn't be going in without insurance, you know what I mean? Because obviously there's always an accident, something could happen. But for the fact that you only have a $10,000 minimum, plus with deductible could be anything. How many people can afford $1,500 or $2,000 or $2,500? I mean, for God's sake, especially after a fight. You know, I mean, most of these amateurs they're trying to make a living from it, not to have to cost them more money or something that they can't even afford. Might as well even have insurance.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, well taken. Point well taken.
Absolutely. All right.
I mean, That's just one of them, Frank. I mean, I got more here.
Well, go down the list, brother.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Go down the list because you got my attention.
One thing that I've still to this day that bothers me is why don't the state inspectors inspect the Florida Boxing Commission?
Why doesn't the say that one more time?
Why doesn't the state inspectors inspect the Florida Boxing Commission? Why are we the only ones being inspected? Why not the Florida Boxing Commission?
Well, maybe because it's like doing your own audit. I mean, they're part of the Florida Boxing Commission. It should be a separate organization, an entity. If you're gonna have somebody inspect the Florida Boxing Commission, it shouldn't be a member of the Florida Boxing Commission.
So basically, they can do whatever they want and get away with it.
No, I think what you're talking about is getting another entity to come in to. It's almost like the police
to oversee.
Yeah.
The Florida Boxing Commission.
Yeah, it's almost like the police have internal affairs. You know, like there's no cop can do interviews in their own jurisdiction. They have internal affairs for that. You know, so yeah.
There's another one for you, Frank. And I guarantee you, none of these promoters are doing it because for as long as I've been doing it, I don't think it's ever been done. Maybe at my shows, but nobody else's. Women, amateur women, are actually supposed to have their own locker room. You aware of that?
I am not.
Even if there's one woman fighter, she needs to have her own locker room.
Makes sense.
They're not supposed to be in the same locker room with the men.
Wow. Is that amateur or pros?
Amateur.
Amateur.
And I imagine pro also. I didn't look into the pros.
Now, do they take pregnancy tests?
Oh, absolutely. Well? That's a must.
That's a must. So they don't have locker rooms for themselves. So you're saying that they can't change or
probably
train?
Change in the bathroom and then just warm up with the guys.
Is that what
just part of the rule?
Is that what you're seeing though?
I don't know why that rule was put in place. I just know it's a rule. It's probably for that reason.
And nobody's following it though. Is what you're saying? Nobody's following it.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
Interesting stuff. I mean, I think that what we're gonna go through this interview is Mike. Can you give us like your top 5? I know you got 2 already, but maybe you can give us a top 5. And tell you what, give me your top 5 when we take another commercial break, ladies and gentlemen. Please stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Me and Mike are gonna go at this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Morteholm.
I don't understand what's going on here.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Morteholm.
I don't understand what's going on here.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Putemup Podcast, man. If you're following us, check us out. But on social media, of course, PutemupPodcast.com,
Instagram, Facebook.
You got it. But we're talking to Mike Gattuso. He is the founder and CEO of Global. It's a sanctioning body for amateur MMA, right? But you also do kickboxing. Is that right, Mike? You also do all the kickboxing as well? So I love the MMA side of it, of course, and that's why I'm asking the questions of MMA. But he does more, of course, than MMA. Mike, you were going through your top 5 lists of stuff that is written, and it's rules and regulations that you're seeing that either 1 doesn't make sense or 2 nobody's following. But continue with your list. See what we got.
All right, and this is the 5 that I think are most important. Obviously, the insurance is one.
Absolutely.
Also, bottles, and I'm talking about beer bottles. You know, you're supposed to have plastic plates, plastic utensils, plastic cups, no bottles. And I still see bottles.
Yeah,
and
you know why, right? Because these events are happening in bars, in these sway nightclubs, and where it's glass. It's all glass bottles, you know. So, but what does that say about the sanctioning body? Like, you know, and that's one of your pet peeves. You go out there and you see all that. I've seen you stop a show because somebody had a glass bottle by the cage. I've seen you take that guy out of the place and make sure that wasn't happening. So kudos goes out to you for that. But what does that say about the other sanctioning bodies? What message can you give all the other sanctioning bodies that are looking at this podcast today? And what's the message overall message in regards to that? Because that to me is safety. Like if somebody wanted to grab that and throw that in the ring, throw that in the cage, you got a serious injury. Like, that's glass. You don't mess with that.
Isn't like if you're hosting this event at a bar or something like that? I mean, shouldn't the bar have also some responsibility at not serving somebody a glass that's gonna be, or the waitress not serving somebody a glass in cage side? I mean,
Does the sanction body have that clout, Mike, to go to the bar owner and say, "Hey, while we're doing this event, no glass"?
That's part of my checklist. I do my rounds, and the first thing to do is you gotta let the bartenders know, remove any bottles only to be served in paper cups. That's the first thing I do. Wow. And the whole thing is, a lot of times if they don't want to follow rules and regulations, guess what? That's the last show I'll be sanctioned. You know, I don't need to sanction. I got other things in my life to do. You know what I mean? If they want to go to their business, they want to do professionally and organized and follow regulations and protect themselves, then you deal with me. If not, go deal with your buddies, man. And sooner or later, man, something's going to go wrong.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, something won't go wrong. And eventually it does.
I agree.
It does. My other thing, Frank, is what's the most craziest thing is suspensions. Okay? So I have fighters get suspended. I submit it to the Florida Box Commission, and nobody knows that person was suspended. So what the hell am I giving them a suspension for? When it's basically to get the next person in trouble because that fighter fights in the next fight. But how the heck was he supposed to know that fighter was suspended? There's no way for us to know. They need to make this public. They need to make the suspensions public as well as the records. I submit records to them. What do they do with these records? They don't go submit them to MMA.tv or Tapology. They hold on to them. What's the purpose of giving you these records? You know what I mean? Is it just when the fighter goes pro that they can show they have the proof? But nobody knows what these records are because they're keeping them hidden. That needs to be public. The suspension needs to be public as well. I don't know who got hurt on Rise of the Warrior or wherever the heck it is. How am I supposed to know? I'm not going to call every freaking sanction body to find out.
Well, that's a big health issue.
There's a lot of loopholes here that need to be closed out, and that's why I've made a list. And this is what I'm going over with the Florida Box Commission, because we're going to close these loopholes out. They need to be closed.
So, Mike, what you're telling me is that a fighter could fight on Monday, get suspended, and fight on Tuesday because nobody knows that he was suspended.
Yeah, because number one, because of the suspension, and because the records are not public. So
right.
How am I supposed to find out if he fought or not? How am I supposed to know if he's suspended?
So in the pro world, we have mixedmartialarts.com that you could actually see in public if the person is suspended or not, right? Especially if the promoter uses what now the website has changed. So if a promoter wanted to do an event, a pro promotion, they have to go to MMARec.com, MMAREC.com. And then the promoter signs up, he puts in his fight card, the Florida Boxing Commission reads it, sees it. It automatically tells you in red if the person is suspended, and if it is suspended, what he needs to do to make sure he gets cleared. So that's all good and dandy in the pro world. But you're telling me, which I didn't even notice, that there is no amateur website to go to do that exact same thing that the pros are doing, right? So what are you, Mike, as one of the leaders who've led the way in a lot of changes with the boxing commission, a lot of changes even with the headgear, with the shin guards, and I've seen you active in all that stuff. What are the things that you have in place to make these changes? How do you go about that? How do you go about making these changes?
Well, one, like the insurance, I'm going to push for a non-deductible or no deductible whatsoever. A deductible should be removed. The fighter shouldn't have to pay for any insurance. I mean, he's making the promoter money, so he shouldn't have to pay anything out of pocket. Second of all, the suspensions and the records, they need to start posting this stuff. If not, I'm not going to send it to them. Why am I even sending it to them?
Yeah.
It's a waste of my time. Yeah. They need to make that information public. You know, so at the March's agenda, which is next year, there's a lot of stuff that I'm bringing up that needs to be cleaned up and fixed. You know, they need to go a little bit like the liquor stuff about the bottles, the way it's worded. You know, it sounds like, okay, you can't have bottles ringside, but in the audience you can have bottles. And you know, as good as I do, it's not allowed in the audience as well. But it's the way it's worded. Yeah. They need to reword this correctly. You know, it's just not making sense. You know, and those things need to be fixed. There's the 40-year-old. You know, the other thing about insurance too was
CAT scans.
Well, that's the 40-year-olds, the DVD, EKG, the physical examination by the doctor he's capable of fighting. A lot of them aren't doing that. You know, they're not looking at date of birth. It doesn't click in their head at 40 years of age that this guy needs to be checked to make sure that he's qualified to fight. that's slipping, and I see it a lot. And and the insurance thing that I came back to, just in case there's any sanctioned bodies that are watching, when I did contact the insurance company, all insurances expire at 12 o'clock midnight. If the fight starts at a minute till 12 midnight, the fight can go on until it's finished. You don't stop the fight in the middle of the fight. You pay for 12 bouts for insurance. You're allowed to carry, as long as it starts before midnight, you can carry that fight through until the end.
Interesting.
Right.
Interesting. Listen, I want to talk more about it.
Yeah, I think so too.
Just the one bout, not the whole
Yeah.
event. The event cannot go past midnight. Just the one bout that started before midnight can carry.
Got you. No, that's interesting. That's great information.
I wanted to ask him a question when we come back from
Yeah,
commercial
guess
break.
what, brother? Another break. We get another break, man. We've got so many bills to pay. It's expensive.
I
with
want
damn
to know.
watches
I
and
want to
stuff.
know where it all goes.
I don't know where it all goes, brother. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We'll be right back.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Morteholm.
I don't understand what's going on here. I'll fight you with my eyes.
What?
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Morteholm.
I don't understand what's going on here. I'll fight you with my eyes.
Welcome back, everybody. Putemup Podcast. Greatly appreciate the support, man. Thank you guys for following us and liking us. Please subscribe to all the social media channels at Putemup Podcast. We are talking to Mike Gattuso, owner of a sanctioning body here in Florida, who's been a pioneer of this stuff since day one, ladies and gentlemen. And I am honored to have him on here and talk about the business side. We were going through his top 5 of quirks, if you will, on sanctioning body. But Mike, last question, and I wanted to ask you this. I've seen that amateur fighters, when they come on board with, let's say they fight in your sanctioning body, and his name is Patrick Regalado, right? You put Patrick Regalado as a fighter. Then all of a sudden he fights in another organization with another sanctioning body, and they misspell Patrick Regalado. And now what we have are 2 fighters, the same fighter, with 2 different names, with 2 different records now. How are we policing that? And what is the process when a fighter is registered for a fight? Why aren't we looking at one ID? Why aren't we looking at one name? Why is it that we have this issue?
Frank, I don't have that issue. I mean, it's standard. In my registration form, when I check their ID for their age, and I look at the name, I clarify the name right then and there and fix it. Because a lot of times they might put their nickname down, so I always clarify through their driver's license to make sure that that's the correct spelling of their name. But some people won't do that. They rush through it, or they don't care, or they don't know what the heck they're doing. I can't.
You got people not even checking IDs out there.
Yeah, so that's what that tells me, is that a fighter fills out the application, and if he puts, Pat the Notorious Regalado, and they put in Notorious Regalado as his first name, you
just got a new fighter.
We just got a new fighter.
Well, Frank, you still have the date of birth to be able to match them. That's why you supply the Florida Box Commission or whoever it is, the date of birth along with the name. So I don't know if the name is Jonathan or John, but as long as the date of birth matches in the state that they're fighting out of, it will clarify that those are both the same people.
Okay, so that's
It might not be under the same record. Be multiple records, but it's the same person.
Well, listen, Mike, I wanted to bring you on board, man, because you have always been the clear-headed guy. You're the guy who always have taken MMA to the next level. You're always thinking, past what everybody's put out there. Like, you're always 2 steps ahead. Like you said, you're going to meet with the Florida Box Commission on March. He's going to go over some of the stuff that he believes should be changed, and rightly so, things that are added. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. Because here I am talking about the last 3 shows about how the Boxing Commission ain't doing this, how the sanctioning body should be doing that. And I wanted to get on Mike to give us his point of view with the social body. So real quick to wrap it up, in your own words, how do you see amateur MMA in the state of Florida? What is the health of MMA in Florida when it comes to amateurs? Where do you see it now? Where do you see it going in the future?
Well, Frank, obviously we've seen a big growth between 2012 till now. I mean, we're more organized, better shows. I honestly think there's a lot of better shows. There's obviously more amateur promoters. They're still promoting these amateurs to get them to pros. I wish there was more pro promotions but it's a tough state, but I see that there's really good growth here, with the kickboxing and the boxing still hanging in there. Now we've entered into the world of bare knuckle fighting, which has opened another door. But I mean, we have a lot of amateur fighters, and a lot of fighters are joining these gyms and they're training and they want to fight. It's competition. Yeah. And as long as these regulations are safer, man, I mean, as of right now, I'd be scared to fight, man, knowing some of the shit that's out here.
Absolutely.
It has to be fixed. But you know what? I mean, the growth is there, and I think we're going to continue to progress, and we're just going to keep getting more organized, Frank. And I think, once we start making this information public, whether it's the suspensions, the records, we need to get that out to the public for the promoters to be able to see it, the fighters to be able to see it themselves, as well as the sanction bodies. I think the sanction bodies need to see that more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But we're going in the right direction, Frank. I don't see us going backwards or taking any step back. I mean, we haven't had any bad injuries to fighters, so it seems to be pretty healthy.
When you talked about making it public, I have an issue with the Florida Boxing Commission making anything public. You know that if you want anything documented as far as paperwork from these events, you simply go to their website and you request for those public documents, right? So those public documents are out there. But you know what happens? UFC came to town and said, you know what? There is a clause in one of the rules and regulations that stipulates that the information shouldn't be given out because it deals with pays and this and this and that. So now your pro promoters here in Florida are using that statute, that clause, which really has to deal with pay-per-view and bigger numbers and this and that. But it's crazy now that these promoters, they're not doing it to block it because, hey, we don't want you to know our business. They're doing it because they don't want you to see that they paid $200 for a fighter and that we're not paying these fighters what they're supposed to be paid. And I think that's why, because why else? You're telling me because it's pay-per-view buys? You don't have any fucking pay-per-view buys. You don't have any TV. You don't have any nothing for you to be like, oh, we can't show you what we're paying these fighters. All of a sudden now everybody through the Florida Boxing Commission statute, which the UFC uses, which you cannot compare the UFC to these local pro promoters, God bless them, but you just can't. So the fact that everybody's now blocking that it just tells me that there's some shady shit going on with the Florida Boxing Commission. So if you want to make this amateur stuff public, their records public, please don't let them have another sanctioning statute that says, oh, you can't make it public because you're 19 years old or under, or some stupid crazy shit like that doesn't allow for that to happen. So if you do fight for that and you have them put it out there, please make sure there's no clause in between another statute that says, oh, we can't give you this information because it's on pay-per-view. There's no way.
Well, see, the whole thing is this. If they don't, and then something does happen, it's going to fall back on them. Because if I don't know if that fighter was suspended, how can they tell me? How can they give me a warning or fine me if I didn't know? They need to make that information public.
I agree with you 100%.
Just as well as the records. How am I supposed to know if he's got 3 fights if I don't see the record?
So we just need, so is the solution getting somebody else to police these people? Is the solution getting another website and having some organization police that? I mean, what's the solution?
I think that's what Mike was talking about, is creating another website and putting all this thing public, and then for them to create this network so you can actually see if he was suspended or not suspended. Mike, I think you're on the right track. Absolutely 100% correct. Those are the changes that should be made. And I think that any other sanctioning body that's listening will agree with you. If they're any smarter than you, they should definitely agree with you and saying, hey, you know what? And it's common sense. Let's make this thing happen. So hopefully you get the push behind it.
Absolutely, man.
Hopefully you get the support behind it. You got my support 100%.
100%.
So, Mike, listen, thank you so much for being part of the show, man. Thank you so much for your time and consideration and being, and just thank you for everything you've done for this sport in the state of Florida. No one has told you. Let me be the first. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for all you do, man.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, man.
Mike, we'll talk soon, brother. God bless, man. Say hello to the wifey. Thank you for the birthday wishes, and we'll see you soon, brother.
Thank you.
Hey, real quick, before you go, is there a Twitter handle, email handle, if anybody wants to get in contact with you in regards to sanctioning body and starting their own stuff, or even partnering with you? Is there any emails you want to give out?
Listen, I'm always open. Anybody needs any kind of help, consultation, whatever, they can reach me at globalfinesolutions.com. I'm on Facebook under Global Fine Solutions. just reach out to me. Anything you need to know, I'll be more than happy to assist you. Whether it's anything, you got an injury, whatever it is with MMA, call me.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Mike Gattuso, Global
Mike
Fighting
Gattuso.
Solutions. Thank you, brother. We'll talk soon, man.
Thank you, sir.
God bless.
Thank
Alrighty.
you.
Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, man, Mike, what a great guy, man.
No, that was a great show.
That man, let me tell you, his passion for MMA and his
tough.
knowledge, more than that, his knowledge. This
Yeah.
brother gets deep. Like, you see him, he's
Yeah.
going into the rules and regulations, and he analyzes and he just dissects it,
And
man.
this is exactly what this sport needs at this level to get it to the point that it wants to go.
Man.
There's people like that who actually give a shit.
That's right. Listen, if you tell me the top 10 names of who are the people in Florida that you should know when it comes to MMA, Mike
Mike
Gattuso's on
Gattuso
the
is
list.
definitely one of them.
He's one of them. He's definitely you got to know this guy. I mean, he'll definitely make your life easier.
My co-host is also one of those guys. so
Oh
don't
man,
forget that guy
stop
right
it.
there.
Stop it, brother. Stop it. Stop
Cut
it.
it out.
Cut it out, brother. Cut it out. So let's talk about UFC, man, real quick
We've
before we wrap
got
up the show.
some local news. Of course, everybody knows about what happened this past weekend. The Venezuelan Vixen takes down the Lioness. But I'm more interested in what happened afterwards. So everybody saw Kayla Harrison.
Yeah.
She was cage side. But it wasn't until afterwards that there was a possible face-off and a possible multi-million-dollar fight in the works that is no longer around.
Yeah, no,
So
on the table.
that is a huge letdown, especially for the UFC. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Will she go to Bellator? So that's still in the talks.
Now Amanda's on top. Now Amanda fights, and
Juliana Pena.
and she still loses 1 million. And Juliana now only has like 300,000 followers on,
Right.
on Facebook and social media and stuff like that. So we went from like 19 million to 1 million to now 300,000
300,000.
followers, right? So I'm guessing that UFC is the social media, advancement with Pena, right? Because her 300,000 now being the world champion and being
It's going to
champion
definitely grow.
is now going to grow. So
And I'm going to tell you, you don't know what kind of marketing they're going to put behind Juliana Pena, which they didn't put behind Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
And they did put behind Ronda Rousey.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you don't know, and her stock might just go up, and they are talking rematch right away. But that's how the UFC is going to handle that.
Wow, it's interesting to see where that goes. But shouts out to Miss Pena, man, for winning. I mean,
Yeah, man.
Amanda, we know personally, and
Yeah, absolutely.
man, I think she's a monster. She still is. I'm looking for a big rematch.
It's
man.
classified as one of the biggest upsets. But I wanted to talk about some local news too.
Okay, let's do it.
We've got some really exciting news. I want to shout out. There are 5 fighters that come from the XFN organization,
Okay.
who will be representing this country in the International Mixed Martial Arts Federation tournament. It's going to be
Nice.
early January. I want to give these guys a shout out and wish them a lot of luck. It'll be Kat Nelson, Mervyn Miller, David Camacho, Daniel Morrison, and Naomi Young.
Nice.
So we want to give those guys a big shout out. Congratulations going
Congrats.
out there and representing our country.
Congrats.
We got, BKFC was in Tampa last week here.
Okay.
And our very own Mike Perry was doing some color commentary until Julian Lane starts throwing stuff at him, and Mr. Mike Perry leaves his commentary gig and gets into a brawl right in the middle of national TV.
That's amazing,
So-
man. Now, what does that say about Mike Perry?
Well, I mean, look, Mike Perry just signed a deal with BKFC, and it seems to be their MO, how they put their fighters together.
Yeah.
So you had Hector Lombard had the problem when he won his match,
Yeah.
and he went after that fighter, and then you got Julian Lane provoking Mike Perry. Before that, you had Paige Van Zandt being provoked by the other girl. So it seems to be that is, maybe it was set up. I don't know, but they did brawl there at the end of the match.
Yeah, I know it's all over the place. But to me, it's like if that's how you're promoting fights, then what I'm saying is, because we know Mike as well, I've put him on a card, House of Fame, back in the days. So I knew Mike when he wasn't a UFC guy and still training and doing his thing. But what does that say about fighters nowadays promoting the fights, because to your point, yeah, that's probably going to be a fight in the future, and that's the hype for it.
Right.
Could there be nothing wrong of a fighter now going out of character? You're doing an interview on TV. You're doing hosting and you're commentating. Somebody says something to you.
I think
or
there
does
should be
something.
some kind of guidelines. I do agree with that.
Yeah. But it's great TV. It's great TV. It's
It
great
makes for
marketing
great
now.
drama. It's amazing
Yeah.
drama, and people eat it up. And of course,
Yeah.
they're going to sell a lot of tickets. And BKFC has been exceptionally successful.
So kudos goes out to Mike
So
Perry.
Good for them. And
You know,
he's probably going to have. And not only that, like I
Because
said,
Mike Perry don't take no shit either. You know him.
They inked a new deal, so he's probably going to make a nice chunk of change.
Yeah, no, congrats to Mike, man, and his success with
Absolutely.
BKFC. I think that's where he's supposed to be at. I think that's his home.
I
The
think-
brother
and
could throw some hands.
No,
man.
that style is made just for him.
Yeah, no,
And good for him. It gives him the second chance at a career.
absolutely.
I wanted to talk about really quick. We got some exciting news going to happen in Miami, January 28th. We're going to have Eagle FC.
January
Will be bringing in their first show. Now, for those who don't know, that is Khabib Nurmagomedov. Okay,
Yes, no.
I butchered that. I know that.
sure did.
But that is Khabib's organization, and the first event will be held here in Miami, headlined by Alistair Overeem and Tyrone Spong. Rashad Evans is also on that card.
Nice.
So
That's
we're gonna
January
have-
28th.
January 28th. But they're going to have a news conference, I believe, Wednesday.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday coming up, and we're gonna know where they're gonna hold the event.
Awesome. You gonna be there?
Of course, I'm gonna be there.
conference.
You're gonna be there too.
I may. See what happens. Because I'll be focused on January 29th's card.
Oh, that because on January 29th we've got
Pillow Fighting
none other
Championships.
than
Pillow Fighting Championships. There's a pillow
you
right
guys
there.
always see this pillow right here.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, January 29th, PFC. FightPFC.com. If you don't know nothing about it, you need to know.
I'm gonna tell
what's
you
up.
guys. When I first heard about it, skeptic, second thought, maybe laugh, but now I'm taking it serious. I've seen these guys in action, and I know the people who are organizing this. They care about this.
They're passionate.
They're super passionate about this.
Listen, I would not be a part of it myself if I didn't believe in the success of these individuals. These guys are just amazing guys who believe that they can literally make this a sport. And why not? I mean, listen, we've got red light, green light.
Absolutely.
We got tag as
We've
a
got
sport
tag,
now.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
pillow fighting is right
And
up there.
by the way, hold on. There's $5,000 to the winner here. So
Nice.
come on.
5 G's,
Five
to the
Gs
person
and
who wins
$250
this
to
tournament.
show.
Yeah, this is a good event. $5,000 to the person who wins the event. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to sign up and do this, you can. You don't have to be an expert pillow fighter in order to make this happen.
Absolutely not.
Go on PFC.com.
PFC.com.
And there's a link there with if you want to fight, look for fighters. Boom, click on that link and put out your information. It only takes a few seconds to put your information out there, and it'll go to the matchmaker. And who knows, you could be going for $5,000 on
Why
pillow
not?
fighting.
Maybe you got a
homework, though.
grudge match with your neighbor.
That's right.
Maybe you got a
That's
grudge
right.
match with your neighbor. Maybe
Yeah.
your brother.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about it is that there's definitely going to be a theme. I think right now, as a matter of fact, Deuces Wild #2. Ladies and gentlemen, check this out. Deuces Wild #2 is happening December 18th at the Casino of Dania.
At Dania Casino.
Dania Casino. In that fight, in that card, there's going to be 2 pillow fighting championship matches. And who's headlining is Mike Trujillo, who is an MMA
No way.
fighter. Mike Trujillo is going to be
All
there.
right. That's
He's-
going to be exciting to
He's
watch.
going to be fighting a gentleman
yeah.
with no introduction, Renee Whiteboy
Oh,
Rodriguez.
the Hialeah champ.
The
will be in the
Hialeah
house.
champ
Yeah.
will be in the house, testing his skills upon that. There's also going to be a female fighter on the card. 2 females going at it. One is an amazing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. And it's going to be interesting. If you haven't seen the girl
If you
fights,
haven't seen it, I was just going to say, if you haven't seen those girl fights,
oh, man, it's something to watch. Ladies
Yeah,
and gentlemen.
yeah.
You
And
know,
let
they
me tell
hit
you,
harder than the guys.
it will
Shit.
it was going to give you guys a great insight as to what this really is.
Yeah. So if you guys can make it to Deuces Wild #2, December 18th at the Dania Casino out there, please do so. You're going to see some great MMA. You're going to see some great pillow fighting, and
you're
you'll
gonna
see
have a
what it's
great
all
time.
about. And you'll have a great time. It's going to be awesome. I'll be there. Pat will be there.
Absolutely.
You know, come by, say hello to us, check us out, and that'll be a great event, man. So don't miss it. FightPFC.com. Sign up. Get your $5,000 if you think you can do this and make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're wrapping up the show.
Absolutely.
Mr. Pat.
Hey, Frank,
final
as
words?
usual. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We look forward to, we're getting a great response. We look forward to seeing you guys again. We want to thank Mike Gattuso one more time for coming on.
Absolutely.
I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Frank Moore.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Happy birthday one more time.
Oh, man. Thank you so much, man.
Go.
55, never felt any better, man. I tell you much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. I promise you, listen, when we first started this podcast, we wanted to give you something different. We wanted to make sure that you're not just hearing about, what's going on in the UFC and everything else, but we wanted to give you the business side of it, what's the health of MMA, bring some people on. We'll bring some fighters. We'll talk about some for certain fighters and certain things that's going on in their lives and what's happening. But we wanted to give you the inside scoop, and I think Pat and myself, we're committed to that. And each and every week, we're going to bring you some great content. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Follow us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, PutemupPodcast.com. Check out these videos. I guarantee you, you will not be sorry, and you will be entertained. We'll see you in the next one.
See you all at the fights.
It's the Putemup Podcast with your host, Frank Morejon.
I don't understand what's going on here. I'll fight you with my eyes.
What?